Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping way, way back, focusing on a time when our understanding of early humans in China just exploded. We're talking Middle Pleistocene, maybe 500,000 years ago.
Right, and it's fascinating because it's not just about the history itself, but how we discovered that history. We're drawing mostly from Morris Rossabi's work today.
And our mission, what are we trying to unpack here?
Well, two things, really. First, how modern archaeology just completely changed the game for understanding pre-literate China. And second, there's this incredible story, almost unbelievable, about a huge discovery that just vanished.
Okay, that disappearance story sounds like something we definitely need to get to. But first, this explosion of knowledge you mentioned. It wasn't always like that, right? For a long time, we knew very little about China's really deep past.
Exactly. Things changed dramatically after 1949 with the founding of the People's Republic of China. There was this huge shift in approach.
How's
Systematic surveys, government-backed archaeology on a scale never seen before, and also, maybe unintentionally, all the new construction, opening up land for farming, for cities. It literally turned the earth over.
So building the future accidentally uncovered the distant past? The landscape itself was giving up secrets because it was being changed so much.
Precisely. And what emerged was just this amazing treasure trove of fossils, artifacts, stuff nobody had imagined was there.
You mentioned the pace. Can you give us a sense of how fast things were moving?
Yeah, okay, get this. There was a major textbook on ancient Chinese archaeology, published in 1954.
Right.
By 1978, it had been revised and expanded 4 separate times.
4 times in barely 20 years. That's, wow. That's not just adding a few notes.
No. It suggests the core ideas, the fundamental theories about where people lived, how they lived. They were constantly being updated, even overturned.
So any sort of generalization about that period would be out of date almost immediately.
Pretty much. It really shows you how knowledge builds, and sometimes it builds incredibly fast, and how provisional it all is,
Okay, let's dive into the most spectacular piece of this puzzle then. The site that really defines this Middle Pleistocene period you mentioned, Zucudian.
Zucudian,
Okay.
yes. It's a complex of limestone caves, maybe 40 kilometers or so west of Beijing.
And when did that first come onto the radar?
The initial discovery phase was around 1921, largely thanks to a Swedish paleontologist, J.G. Anderson. But the real excavation work ramped up later.
What made Zucudian so special? Why is it the site for this era?
Well, it was the sheer richness of it. They found something like 15 distinct geological layers with evidence of occupation.
15 layers, so not just a quick stopover. People were living there or coming back there again and again over a vast amount of time.
Exactly. It suggests incredible continuity, stability even, across potentially millennia. This was a place people knew, used, and returned to.
And the most famous find from those layers?
The Beijing man, right? That's the one. Scientifically, Sinanthropus pekinensis, though you sometimes see the older name, Pithecanthropus pekinensis too.
Why the different names? Just scientists changing their minds.
Sort of. It reflects how classification evolves as more fossils are found globally, trying to fit them into the bigger human family tree. But whichever name you use, the discovery itself was monumental. They found remains, skulls, bones, lots of teeth from about 40 different individuals.
40 individuals, that gives you a real population snapshot, doesn't it? But there is a pretty grim detail in the source about them.
Ah, yes, the mortality rate. It's quite stark. 40% of those individuals, they died before they were 14 years old.
40%. It really hammers home how tough life must have been.
Incredibly tough, a constant struggle. But despite that, the evidence shows these early hominids were surprisingly capable.
Capable in what ways? What could they do?
Well, crucially, they knew how to make and control fire. That's a game changer, right? For warmth, for protection, for cooking.
Absolutely fundamental.
And they were making stone tools, not just random rocks, but shaped implements,
Yeah.
consistently produced.
Okay, so they had fire, they had tools. What about food? You mentioned struggles, but they must have been effective hunters or gatherers to survive there for so long.
Very effective. The evidence points to a varied diet. They were hunting some pretty big animals, ancestors of deer, leopards, elephants, horses, water buffalo.
Wow, elephants and leopards. That takes serious skill and maybe cooperation.
Probably. But they weren't just big game hunters. They were also gathering nuts, berries, exploiting the whole environment. It suggests, a fairly complex understanding of their surroundings and maybe even organized group behavior.
So it paints a picture of a really resilient, adaptable group surviving for potentially hundreds of thousands of years, leaving this incredible record behind.
A record that lasted 500,000 years in the ground.
only to vanish. This is the part of the story that's just mind-boggling. These fossils survive all that time, and then they're lost barely 20 years after being dug up.
It's tragic, isn't it? The timing is key.
Yeah.
1941.
Right in the middle of incredible turmoil.
Exactly. The Chinese and American scientists involved realized things were getting dangerous in China, with the war escalating globally. They decided the safest thing was to send the fossils to the U.S. for safekeeping.
Makes perfect sense. A reasonable precaution.
It seemed like it. But history had other plans. The U.S. entered World War II in December 1941, and somewhere in that chaotic period, the fossils just disappeared.
Gone. Completely.
Completely gone. The very attempt to save them seems to have led directly to their loss. It's a terrible irony.
And we still don't know for sure what happened. Are there theories?
There are basically two main theories that get talked about. The first one is that they actually made it onto a ship headed for America.
Okay.
But that ship was sunk by the Japanese Navy. Lost at sea, a casualty of war.
Swallowed by the ocean. That's one possibility. What's the other?
The other theory is that they never even got on a ship, that they were stolen, maybe while waiting for transport, or perhaps later during the chaos, the movement of troops, equipment. Things just vanished in wartime.
So, either lost in the fog of war at sea or lost on land amidst the confusion. Either way, they're gone, the original bones.
Gone. What we have now are casts, models, detailed notes, drawings made before 1941. They're incredibly important, but they're not the originals. A huge piece of the puzzle just vanished.
That is an astonishing loss. But as tragic as that is, the field didn't just stop in 1941, did it? The source material mentions that research continued and actually expanded our view beyond Zucudian.
Yes, and that's really crucial. For a long time, because Zucudian was so prominent and near Beijing, the thinking was kind of centered there and more broadly around the Yellow River Basin.
Yeah.
That was seen as the heartland.
The traditional cradle of Chinese civilization.
Right. But those systematic surveys we talked about, the ones that started uncovering things post-1949, they started turning up evidence in completely different places.
Like where?
All over, really. Significant Paleolithic sites were found far away down in southwest China, up in Manchuria, Inner Mongolia, places well outside that old Yellow River focus.
So suddenly, the map of where early humans lived in China got much, much bigger.
It shattered the old map, basically. Finding tools, artifacts, even other hominid remains in these widespread areas proved that early life wasn't just confined to one region.
What did that do to the overall understanding? It must have challenged existing theories.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It showed that hominids were present across a much wider area, probably much earlier, and were more adaptable than previously thought. They weren't just clustered in one core zone.
And I imagine finding things in, say, Manchuria versus Southwest China raises new questions, too.
Yeah.
About connections, different adaptations.
Exactly. It sparks all sorts of scholarly debates. How did these different groups relate to each other? Were they connected? How do they compare to Beijing Man? It makes the picture much more complex.
Which means we're still kind of in that fast-moving discovery phase you described earlier. Even with all these finds, the interpretation is still evolving.
Very much so. The source material suggests that scholars generally agree we need more discoveries to really sort out these big questions, these controversies about who was where, when, and how they relate to each other. The story's definitely not finished.
So wrapping this up then, what's the big takeaway from this deep dive? We've seen this incredible burst of discovery, decades of work, and then this shocking loss.
I think there are two powerful lessons here. First, just the sheer effort involved in uncovering our past. It takes systematic work, political will, sometimes just luck. Digging up fragments of history is hard.
Right.
But second, and maybe more profoundly, it shows how fragile that knowledge is.
Yeah.
The Beijing Man story is the ultimate example. You find something priceless after 500,000 years, and then poof, it's gone in a moment of human conflict. It really makes you value what we do have.
It certainly puts those casts and photos in a different light.
It really does. And maybe this leaves you, the listener, with a thought to ponder. We've heard that even the interpretation of famous finds like Beijing Man is still debated by experts. So as new discoveries keep coming, how might they change not just our match of where early humans lived, but our understanding of who they fundamentally were? It seems like that picture is always shifting, always provisional.
A really important point. Our understanding of the past is constantly being reshaped. Well, that's all we have time for in this deep dive. Thank you for joining us.